Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Flash. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, there's a whole situation of we've got this whole Nash situation to deal with because Eobard's inside of his mind because they're also dealing with the whole thing of, right, we got to find a way to limit Barry's usage of his powers because he can't go full blown. So they're basically giving him like a speed watch to basically all right, there's green, yellow, orangish, and red. They're basically saying how much of his power he's using. And that means anything from rapid healing to speed thinking to flash time, which I feel like out of anything you would assume flash time would probably take the most draining power. I feel like that'd be probably pushing your powers to the limit using flash time. But regardless, they tried it. It's they're talking what they believe to be Nash, because we end up finding out all the ghosts he's been seeing is that basically every Nash, or at least every Wells that's existed in the multiverse, is inside of his head, which, once again, we still don't understand how and why that happened. Why him specifically? No one else in the multiverse is dealing with that. Once again, look at Brainy's the closest example to that, but that's after they folded together. He absorbed them. Once again, they're different just because of the species they belong to. Their situation's a little different, but it's no one else. It didn't happen with Beth and Alice, on Batwoman. So it's why is Wells' situation so interesting? And also the big question is, why is it that Eobard's inside of his brain? Because it doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't make sense because, and they even bring it up, it's he wasn't originally a Wells. He's Eobard pretending to be Wells. So why is that? What is that? I'm really curious to find out what the answer to that is. Sadly, Eobard was just playing possum and ended up kind of, he tricked them all into kind of knocking themselves out. But the fact of the matter is, Barry was luckily able to get to him before he could basically time travel, because without his powers, he can't time travel except for, the device that lets you time travel. But Barry was so infuriated, he's got Eobard and stopping him, but you see his watch is yellow, so it's he's using up a lot of his speed, and in that moment it starts turning red because Eobard brings up Nora, and then Barry's hand starts doing the moving fast like that. I'm whoa, Barry's only done that twice. To my knowledge, the only other time Barry, I don't know if he did it to Eobard at the end of season 5 or not. I know he did it to Savitar. I think that was something that was crossing his mind. I know he used it to rip apart Savitar's armor, but other than that, I think that's the only other instance we've ever really seen Barry use the vibrating his hand like that. Eobard's go-to killer move. But luckily, Cisco stopped him by knocking Eobard out. But you see the look on Caitlin's face, holy crap, were you about to do that? And even Barry's I don't know, maybe. It's but he's no, I'm good now. But she's no, you can't be around him. The fact of the matter is, until you learn how to control your powers and stuff plus I know how much Eobard, Eobard has taken so much from Barry. Took his mom from him, took his dad away from him. Granted, it slightly worked out, but obviously in the long run, that didn't work out. So much of his time with his dad got spent, they saw each other through a glass, And then also having your daughter taken away from you by him too. It's just all that man has ever done is take from you. So of course, it's you hate him to the bottom of your heart. Much and that's always the interesting symbiotic relationship they have. As much as Eobard hates Barry, hence why he does all that he does, Barry hates him just as much, So that's a kind of, a complicated situation, but it's just Barry can't be around them because it's he can't be trusted with everything that's going down. So another side of this episode is, we find out that Camilla has been replaced by another, which it seems Eva wasn't planning on making another one, but it's just the circumstances allow for it. So it's where's the real Camilla? It's wherever she is, she's somewhere sectioned off that Iris can't find her, because Eve's oh, we got to do this before Iris comes looking for me and stuff like that. So she's trying to get this device that her husband had, but he ended up selling it to Mercury Labs, so it's you need to go get it for me. And then she starts kind of scratching herself, because I think it's that thing the trauma of she starts talking about it, and I think it's that whole thing of thinking like I said, there's just, even though she seems like she's all there mentally, does seem there her psyche has been kind of broken to some extent. Like maybe it is like legitimately being there for so long, like just maybe the betrayal of feeling like, oh, my husband, like it seemed like at the beginning he would visit her, that he did try to find a way to save her, but it almost seems like he just gave up, and it seems like she kind of resents him for that. We'll kind of dally in that direction. But obviously when Camilla and Iris show up at the Mercury Labs, sadly the new meta Sunshine shows up. The fact of the matter is she can basically bend light. What's interesting, all these light-based metahumans, which is interesting because it's like, well, her powers is like that. Ultraviolet's works the way hers does, and the new Dr. Light works like that. So it's interesting, like they are kind of, it's not the same thing, but it's in an interesting spectrum, I think. But nevertheless, the fact of the matter is, Sunshine is pretty hard to deal with because she can just like literally make herself disappear. And the fact that she can literally burn anything by touching it, by, you know, with her light, you know. So they try to call Barry, but like, you know, Frost was like, no, we got this, and she goes to fight, which is interesting because like Sunshine actually was kind of, because they were even talking about the fact that it's like, oh, like, because like Dr. Light was really impressed by Frost, and it's kind of like, oh, you could be someone amongst our ranks and stuff like that. So it's like, you are a tough cookie. But luckily Barry shows up, but then unfortunately, because Barry used Velocity X, which they were like, don't do that because we don't know how you would react to that situation, because his situation with that, because the Velocity was used obviously previously by Trajectory, obviously things and went well for her, but that's also because she wasn't a speedster. Her body couldn't handle that much speed, so obviously, but it's also like you could get, you know, heavily addicted to it, because wasn't that Hunter Solomon's Zoom, wasn't that his whole shtick, if I remember correctly? He got addicted to the Velocity X or whatever. I think it would become like, I think that wasn't that part of his story. I don't remember. It's been a while, but nevertheless, Barry, it doesn't work on him because of like the nature of his abilities, him being a speedster and everything. It had like an adverse effect, so he was able to show up, but he kind of, I don't know if it was necessarily him just moving fast or whether he did go into flash time, whatever the case may be. It didn't end well, and because of it, you know, Frost got hurt. Luckily, she's healing, but, you know, for Barry, I think it all stems from Barry feeling like, I'm powerless. How can I help? Like, you know, because he's relied on his powers for so long. So for him, it's like, you know, it's something that fake Iris brought up. It's like, you put the weight of the world on your shoulder, and he's like, I need to be the Flash. Because for him, it's like, the Flash shouldn't have limits. Like, I should be able to push myself to do whatever it takes to save the city. But if I can't do that, you know, it's like, he feels like, how can I help the city if I don't have my powers, type of situation, you know? I mean, obviously, there's plenty of people who didn't have powers that, you know, let's not forget your best bud, you know, Oliver had no powers, and, you know, but it's just a different situation, because it's like, you know, he's always had his powers. Like, even when he's lost his powers in the past, like, it was a temporary situation, but now it's like, it's kind of worse now, because it's like, your powers are there, you just can't use them, because if you use them up, they're potentially gone forever until you find another source to tap into and everything, you know, so it turns into that whole complicated situation, and, you know. And then obviously Iris isn't, you know, there to kind of back him up, that, you know, be by his side, because she has her own stuff. Even Joe being like, go check on your husband. She's like, right, of course, I was going to do that. I'm sorry. I should check. Yeah, Barry, I'm just sorry. I got reporter brain and stuff like that. But she does kind of go in a little bit of Iris mode, but you can tell she's more so being frustrated by like, oh my God, get over your mess and just do it already. Because it's just her tone, almost just like, oh my God, you're frustrating the hell out of me, Bear. It wasn't out of compassion. It was just more like, shut up and get this done. The quicker you get rid of Sunshine, the quicker me and Camilla could get that device and everything. And that's kind of how I took it. But basically, she was suggesting, like, you know, no metahuman's ability is limitless. All you have to do is think about like it. And then Barry thought about it. It's like, right. You know, I think for him, it's like, because a lot of metas he comes across, their powers do kind of have no limit to them, but at the same time, it's like, especially if your powers are tied to something like Sunshine's is, they were able to kind of like work together and end up taking her down by blocking out the sun and everything. So Barry was able to take her down just by himself. It is kind of sad because like some of those cops ended up getting killed because she was able to just like touch their head and she just basically fried their brains with her light. It was interesting too, getting Singh involved in this and everything too, because Joe's going to him about like, oh, they're potentially being, someone, a mole in the CCPD. But then Singh kind of brings up the fact is, well, she could be invisible, so she could have, Sunshine could have been the spy. But part of me is like, you don't think it's Singh, do you? It's just, I don't know, he acted a little dodgy the entire episode. I just think it's interesting too, like, when the time came, she didn't kill Joe or Singh. She killed the other cops, but she didn't do Singh. That's why I'm like, I'm thinking that I was like, that would be kind of shitty if we find out that Singh was actually. I don't think he is. I don't want to believe he is But then part of me is like, I was about to say like not unless he. I was about to say not unless he was another Eva fake. But I was like, what I mean by like a mirror fake. But I don't think he would be because like obviously Eva and her husband are like the whole black hole thing. Those are two separate things. Like if anything, they're competing against each other, not realizing it, but still, like, that's why I'm like, I don't know, like, Singh just seems so suspicious this episode of me. Maybe we'll find out it's nothing, but it's just like, I don't know. But maybe it's going to be like, oh, that's because Singh was like, the fact is, if you go judging someone, if they start thinking like you're questioning their loyalty, even if it turns out there is a mole, but if there turns out not to be a mole, like, they'll question all your authority. I mean, this is your first year into the job and everything like that. So last thing you want is them thinking like, oh, you're second guessing their loyalties and them being good cops and everything. So that turns into a complicated thing. So maybe that's all it is. Maybe it turns out, oh, it was sunshine the entire time. But I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know. We'll kind of have to, wait and see on that front. But another aspect to this episode, obviously, is the exorcism. I love that Cecile shows up. She's got garlic, a steak, and everything. And immediately I'm like, he's not a vampire, right? But for her, it's like, we had never really dealt with this before, so we need to, be prepared for anything. But so now, they're using Cecile as a means of looking into Nash to find out, like, okay, like, to see if Eobard is there, because their plan is to pull out all the negative tachyons that is essentially everything that is Eobard and remove it from Nash. I'm sorry. But the fact is, it's not that easy because, and it makes sense being who he is. Eobard feeds on negative emotions, considering the fact that he literally has a negative speed force. He is the reverse Flash, kind of everything that is like, which is interesting. What kind of makes sense. He feeds off of despair and hate. And what is Barry? The paragon of love. So he feeds off of love, and that is his strength. And obviously that turns into a thing. We'll get to that soon enough. But basically we learn from Nash's past how he met Allegra, and it turns out, or her name, because I think most because that's the thing. I was about to say, like, because it's interesting how that works, because some doppelgangers have the same name and same face, others don't. Look at Jay Garrett, for example. He's Earth 3's doppelganger of Barry's dad. His dad's name wasn't Jay, it was Henry, so that's why I'm like, I kind of got caught up in that for a second, but I was like, right, they've shown instances of, obviously there was an Earth 2 Barry, there's an Earth 2 Oliver and everything, obviously for some cases they make them have a familiar face and name, but in other cases it shows like, oh, they can be like completely different people to a certain extent. But it turns out like she wasn't his biological daughter, but at the end of the day it didn't matter. He still raised her like and it's like, it's sad because it's like, oh, it wasn't just like, oh, Allegra came, like, because I was thinking like, oh, I figured Allegra was his, and I thought kind of like how Jesse is Harry's. So I was thinking it was kind of a similar situation. It kind of is. He kind of watched her grow up even though she wasn't his. But obviously it's like, they kind of went on Indiana Jones adventures, the archaeologists, excavating stuff, and But the sad thing is, she ended up dying as a byproduct of him, because he kept being like, no, it's not my fault. But like, even though he kept saying that, he still felt guilty about it. And I think it was the whole thing of running away from the pain is what was giving Eobard the strength. And despite what they were doing, like, because the only person that could get Nash out was Nash. And so Barry was like, we're going to use that device to get inside of Nash's head, and we're going to help him expunge Eobard. So the fact of the matter is, Eobard and Barry are, face to face, and Eobard's doing everything he can to goat Barry into using his powers and stuff like that. Talking about like, oh, your daughter, like, oh, like what Nash did, losing a daughter, like, oh, you would know about that pain, right? It's like, you did nothing, you were a terrible father. The fact of the matter is, I taught her everything, but when the time came, you weren't there for her type of situation. Barry was getting pissed, but Barry didn't bite into it because he was like, the fact of the matter is, he loved Nora, and the fact of the matter is he's not going to let Eobard use that against him, kind of besmirch her, like use her memory as a means to kind of hold over him, because for him, the difference is between you act like our emotions make us weak, Eobard, but they don't. They give us strength. Nora was my strength, and our emotions, because if it wasn't for their emotions gives them the strength to love and the compassion and, love to look after and protect the people that they care about, and Cisco ends up referencing, losing Cynthia and how that affected him, and it's like you can't run from the pain. You have to kind of face it no matter how much you want to run from it. And Nash had to confront it and realize that it kind of was on him because he kept running away from the fact. It's like, no, I did. Because by running from it, he's not facing her death because he blames himself because he taught her that the prize is all that matters. And so she took unnecessary risks because he taught her like that. And so when the time came, like instead of like she was holding on by one hand as she was falling, but rather than letting go of the prize and saving her own life, she died because of what he taught her, what he instilled in her. So for him, he came back, he was like, it was my fault. And so Barry was like, the fact is, Nash is confronted like his greatest fear of, his pain. So you have no place here anymore. And they were luckily able to expunge Eobard, turn her to a I'm surprised they didn't make more of a note of that throughout the episode. I mean, maybe the news reports or something, but it's like that was a massive red thunderstorm, which you would almost think CCPD, like you think, well, not just CCPD, the entire city would be a little freaked out by that because it's like the last time something kind of monumental. Well, to be fair, it's like they literally dealt with the Speed Force storms at the end of season 3, so it wouldn't be like the first time like crazy shit happened, but it still would be just kind of like, I don't know, you always be a little worried that like, oh, shit's kind of going down, but nevertheless, it shows it's kind of crazy. So I'm like, oh, that's a lot of negative energy. I mean, to be fair, that's everything that is Eobard, and and it's just kind of like, which is interesting because I guess that's all like the negative emotion. I mean, it just shows you just how angry he is. But I guess you can make the argument maybe that's tied to that energy that is his negative Speed Force getting like shot up in the air. And I'm like, oh, is he dead? Lo and behold, they look into the data later on, but it's like he's not dead. He's disappeared, but that doesn't mean he's dead. Like, he's probably still searching for a means to find a body. So it's like, obviously, Nash won't be the case, but, Eobard's not going to give up that easy. So the question is, what is going to be the next time we see Eobard, and, in what shape or form, what's that going to, turn into? So, which now that's kind of interesting considering everything that Eva can do with making copies. Eobard probably he's floating out there as a consciousness, as essence. All he needs is someone to make a fake body, and Eva's there making fake bodies, so it's like probably waiting for the right opportunity he can possess like a fake body or trick her into giving him or maybe she decides, oh, I'm gonna make this body because you can be useful to me, and maybe they team up like that. That's me just jumping to a conclusion, but I feel like since they've introduced the fact that she can make fake copies, I'm wondering, I'm curious what that would do in the grand scheme of things, him being kind of something else like that. How would that mesh with his speed and stuff like that? I mean, like, obviously there's something different, but on like a biological level, like, because even metahuman powers kind of take their toll on the human body, So I'm wondering, like, would his powers and the speed, his negative Speed Force affect his body, a fake body, in a similar way? I don't know. It's just something interesting to think about. But we do find out, Nash still has the other Wells in his head. It's like, wait, so the whole hearing them thing and seeing them thing, that's not going away. It's like, no, like, you're basically going to have to get used to that. So that's interesting. But basically, Cisco is also telling him about, like, don't kind of, because for him, it's like, him and Allegra kind of got off to a rocky start. So he's like, yeah, I just don't want to give it a chance. But it's like, Cisco's not suggesting, like, replacing Maya in any shape or form, but it's like you have an opportunity present in front of you. Like, you don't know what this relationship could be. It could be something good can grow from, because it even represents, like, hey, when I saw Harry, me and Harry started off at a rough spot because every time I saw him, I saw Eobard, but eventually we became friends. I became his friend, he became mine, So, and even Harry coming to him and being like, see, that's what we were trying to tell you the entire time. You act like you're so smart, but that's definitely going to be interesting. Because I look at it because I'm like, oh, you are essentially now the physical embodiment of that Council of Wells, but in just one body, interestingly enough. I think that's kind of, I'm wondering, is it going to be other, probably some that they're probably going to use the ones that we've come to know over the course of the series. Once again, the only one we probably won't know is, well, because every time we saw one that I assumed it was just Harry, but maybe it's not Harry. Maybe there was HR, but to be fair, HR died back in season 3. Like, we're dealing with Wells that were still alive, like Sherlock and Harry, but other Wells as well, So it's going to be interesting to see where that kind of ends up, going. But obviously it's a whole question of, like, luckily Barry and, Caitlin, because despite everything, it's like, of course, like, she's going to forgive him, But it's like, all right, you two made up, good. So I don't know how we're gonna make this Speed Force, because it's like anyone interacting with Eobard's negative Speed Force, it kills them. Like so, but it reminded Barry like he taught Nora how to make her own Speed Force, and so now we're gonna learn from Nora how to make our own. So it's gonna be interesting to see that continue. Eva ends up getting the device, and now it makes her think like, despite her husband not coming to search for her, trying to help her in any shape or form, he's still after all her toys. So it seems like everything she's doing is for the purpose of getting out, but beyond that, what's her plan? Is it going to be revenge against her husband, or what? Like, how much... I'm curious to see like what are going to be the ramifications of her actually getting out. Like, is she going to kind of break reality to a certain extent? I don't know. I'm curious to see how that's all going to play out. Because obviously you see instances of Joe's kind of picking up on it, because Wally brought out last episode, yeah, something's up with Iris. And even he's noticing just the way Iris, like, normally it's like, oh, aren't you going to check on Barry? She's like, oh, yeah, of course I was going to. Like, more often than not, it's like that wouldn't even have to be something he would have to bring up. It's like, no, Iris would kind of jump to that before I even have the thought. It's like, the fact is, I would kind of suggest that before she'd just do it. That's what's kind of like. He can tell that she's a little off, just the way she's been acting recently. It's like, obviously this case is important to her, but it's just, I'm curious to see how long it's going to take before they kind of figure that out. So that's definitely going to be interesting. Sadly, we'll be waiting a little while for the next episode, because Flash is going on, about a 2-week break, and won't be coming back until April 7th. So do keep that in mind. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.